Good morning. Welcome to China Future Tech webinar hosted by South China Morning Post. Today's theme is Beyond 2025. What's next for China Tech? It is probably one of the most important questions for this planet, and I'm glad today we have invited Stephen, SCMP Science Editor. Stephen's team has produced some of SCMP's most interesting and widely read stories about China's science and technology. And Jasmine, the political economy editor of SCMP, whose team has done reviews of Made in China 2025 and covered technological progress and its implications for the broader Chinese economy. And Ralph, SCMP correspondent for economy. Ralph has lived and worked for many years in Taiwan and has followed China's tech progress for years. I'm Zhou Xing, the tech editor at SCMP. By the way, I would also like to let our readers know that we've launched a special section on SCMP website called China Future Tech, which offered an easy path to find all SCMP coverage of the 6 selected industries, namely electrical vehicles, artificial intelligence, semiconductors, robotics, aerospace, biomedicine, which are all China's key technological development areas and covered by Made in China 2025 program. So let me first start with a review of Made in China 2025. This plan was actually raised a decade ago. So Jasmine, please tell us, how do we view this plan 10 years later? And if you would mark it from 1 to 10, how much mark will you give it to Made in China 2025?
Yes, sure. I would talk about what we have achieved during this initiative. So basically, 10 years ago, China launched this very ambitious program, and it's a 10-year program, and it strives to help China to position its global competitiveness in the high-end technologies and industries. So think about it. Back then, 10 years ago, China stood at the very low end of the global value chain and produced mostly very cheap products and technically backward products. And if you still remember, Zhou Xing, 10 years ago, most of the cars running on Chinese roads were made by Western car makers. And the sky was dominated by either Boeing or Airbus aircraft. And in terms of chips, operating systems, and also the softwares in your computer and mobile phones, they were mostly sourced from the US. Today, this year, marked as the final year for this program. And I have to say, things have changed tremendously. So you can think about it nowadays, how many Chinese electric vehicle brands we have right now. And China-made C919 aircraft has been up and running commercially for more than 1 year. And in terms of frontier technologies, I think everyone is so surprised by the DeepSeek. And also recently during the Chinese New Year Eve Gala, the dance performance by China-made humanoid unitary robots. So the Post last year did a very comprehensive review about the progress of this special initiative, and our analysis confirmed that about 86% of the 260 goals proposed under this plan have been achieved. So this shows that China is kind of well on target about this program, and also strengthened global competitiveness. Of course, in terms of very high-end semiconductor and aerospace, China is still lagging behind. So, but I think it is catching up. So this is basically what happened during the past decade. And if 10 is the full mark, I think I would give it a 9.
Okay, 8.6, yes. So this brings the next question to Ralph. I mean, 10 years ago, people sometimes ridiculed this plan, right? It's kind of, planned economy saying. And so why do you think China has made it? And when the outside world look at Made in China 2025, what has been missing? What has been missed today?
So I think China made it and because it had to. And I think most of the world, they may have misunderstood the slogan, or they may not have paid attention to it, but they understood from their own experiences, whether that's in a Western country or in another Asian country, that China would eventually get there. Because it pretty much has to. If you look back at the whole world, we came from agricultural societies, we came up through industry, hard industry, heavy industry, into what we have now, basically technology. And how China would do it, how long it would take, were questions that I think remained on the minds of people outside of China. But there was no expectation that it wouldn't happen. Now the phrase Made in China 2025 may have eluded a number of people. It does sound like a slogan. It also sounds like the tag on a garment that I would buy, or the white box of something I would buy in another country. You look at the tag and it says Made in China. Today now it's 2025, so you figure it's either maturing or expiring. So there might be a bit of humor or some misunderstanding about what the whole program means. Do I think people distrust it, or probably not? There's confusion. Some people might imagine that China's exaggerating some of the things it's done. It's not doing as much as they say. Or on the other side of the coin, that they're understating how powerful some of the technology could be. It could collect our data, it could monitor what we're doing and send it back to authorities in Beijing. So you have that kind of concern. And at the same time, as we all know, we have global trade wars, we have de-risking, decoupling, call it what you want. So that doesn't help at all in terms of trust and faith in this program.
Okay, so Made in China 2025 doesn't sound like very trustworthy kind of slogan. So this brings me to a follow-up question. You know, there's another slogan called anything but China. Isn't that even more ridiculous?
It is getting to be kind of ridiculous. And I think it comes back to some of the trade wars have been going on now for, I want to say 7 years, strictly speaking, and then we have de-risking, decoupling, whatever you want to call it. It's going on so many places. Whether you like it or not, it does influence how people see China and how willing they are to accept hardware, technological products. We had the whole TikTok battle in the United States. And again, you might have some fears that have been spread by various governments that the technology, especially on the software side, will track your data and it will send stuff back to the authorities in China.
Okay, let's go back to Stephen in Beijing. Your beat has been covering China's science breakthroughs. And would you provide a general kind of picture on what directions China will continue to impress the world, in what kind of areas, Stephen?
Sure. Thanks, Zhou. You gave me a very tough question. But the answer could be quite simple. But I would like to make a little disclaimer here. What we know in the public could be just the tip of an iceberg. So much of the things going on could be under the surface. So we are just talking about things that we know. And before diving into this, I'd like to ask you guys a question. What technologies from China impress you most, let's say? Zhou.
Well, I think maybe for me, the industry-wise, it's EV, because it's from scratch, from zero ground, and suddenly become the world's largest EV maker, and it's going to, looks like if without these tariffs, it's going to dominate the world.
Definitely, yeah, I totally agree with you. In fact, a few days ago, I went to a BYD shop, and I got into one of their new electric SUVs. It was like driving an aircraft. It wasn't driving a car. So it's quite impressive. Rob, what impressed you most?
So I won't mention any brands, but I'm thinking of a brand. And I think it got started well over 10 years ago. And it used to be, they used to call it the iPhone lookalike. And if you go back and Google that, you'll know what brand I'm talking about probably. It sold for very, very little money. And it started in China. And then it started to move offshore.
Yes,
and could get all over Southeast Asia. And then I realized at some point that it wasn't taken seriously because it was labeled an iPhone lookalike by many of its competitors and detractors and various voices from overseas. And then it kind of bumped along for a while. The company became quite powerful. And as of the last couple of years, I've known people who own products by that brand, and I've experienced using stuff that it makes, and I would say it's come a long way. It's not so much of an imitation anymore. I don't know if they've broken any real new technology, but they've taken a lot of older technology and made it work, and they've kept the prices really low.
Yeah, so given the price, it means more and more people can enjoy the high quality smartphone.
And not only smartphones,
around the
but
world, right?
earphones and photo developers that you can hold in your
Oh
hand.
yeah,
All kinds of stuff.
like accessories. Yeah, fantastic. And Jasmine, I'm really curious.
Well, in terms of industrialization, I think renewable energy like solar farms, they're impressive, and also batteries. But for personal interest, I'm a fan of Star Wars, and I like R2D2, 3PO, those kind of robots. So humanoid robots is one of my favorite topics.
Yeah, fantastic. I think we all have a common feeling here about this latest technology breakthrough that China brought to the world. If there's anything common among them, in my personal opinion, they're more about sustainability. It's about something that can continue forever, like renewable energy, of course, solar panels, wind farms. These are the unlimited energy from the sun, and they're clean. That's very important. It's not like burning the coal, although China may have a tremendous amount of coal right under their feet, under our feet. But the pollution, it limits the application of this form of energy. And electric cars, of course, it's about sustainability, not burning the fossil fuel. But although we're talking about made in China 2025, but I think the hardware cannot go too far without software. And I'm sure Joshing, you will agree with me that DeepSeek is one of the most impressive technological wonder that China has offered the world lately. And this is, of course, not part of the 2025 plan, but although they say a lot about the artificial intelligence, but DeepSeek, to me, it's the most exciting thing about DeepSeek is that it's something completely different from what the world has been doing with the ChatGPT or Elon Musk Grok. It's about using less resources to produce more results. And my understanding is also about sustainability. It's about something that we can continue forever. If we are following the traditional way of building powerful AI, like the Grok's way, if you're using 200,000, the most expensive graphic cards, and to train the AI, it will require a huge amount of energy. In fact, Microsoft was considering to revive the 3 Mile Island nuclear. I don't know if you guys have heard of this, but they even wanted to revive the nuclear power plant that suffered a meltdown in the 1970s. And this is bad going down the road.
So Stephen,
we can't.
Yeah. So to answer the question, what are the key kind of follow-up question is what are the key kind of future technologies that will be developed further by China? So you mentioned like sustainable, nuclear, anything else?
Exactly. So if we are following this logic, we may make a small prediction about which way China is heading in the future. It's more about the areas where it will give us little surprises on how to make things more sustainable, like the AI models that can be used on tiny devices. It might be difficult to imagine for now, but in the future we might our digital watch may have its own AI. It could be possible, and then the electric cars for everybody, with with self-driving capabilities, people who are not at the highest income level, the group, they can afford a very safe, a very fancy, a very clean, comfortable electric cars.
Very good. Because we're
possible.
already seeing $10,000 kind of EV with all the functions. Yes.
Yeah, and then we may have new jobs. That's very powerful but affordable for people around the world. We have seen some Chinese drug companies coming up with these cancer drugs. They were not developed in the US, they were developed in China entirely, but they were developed at a cost much lower than those created by the big pharmaceutical companies.
Very good.
And then we may even go to the moon. And but
But
probably
the
not in a
Americans are
way.
already there, right?
Yeah.
Rough.
For decades
1970.
now.
Yeah.
Exactly. But in the past, during the Cold War, we went to the moon at a very high cost. I forgot the exact number, but the United States alone contributed. I think it spent like 2 or 3% of its GDP to go
Is that
to the
so?
moon. That's not sustainable.
I'm surprised it was so little.
Could be more. Yeah, right. So what can make our journey to the moon cheaper? Probably it's not the Starship. I would say Starship looks fantastic. It's a reusable rocket. It's fantastic. But China is probably coming up with something else
Okay.
to do this job.
Yeah, Stephen
Yeah.
has described that a future word, and lots of questions from our readers. Focused on like what role the Chinese government or the state has played in driving this kind of exuberance of technological progress and manufacturing progress. Jasmine.
Well, I have to say, for example, Made in China 2025 are projects of strategic significance. So for this type of projects, China, of course, gives a state support. But this is not surprising. So if you look at the rest of the world and how major technology breakthrough were made, and I think state support, especially during the early days of the basic research, played a very critical role. We don't need to mention about Project Manhattan. In terms of semiconductor industry, the demand from NASA and from Air Force gave the, at that time, very small industry a huge boost during the late 1950s and early 1960s. I think state support is critical for the early days, but the key lies behind, after the breakthrough were made. So how to utilize the breakthroughs to enhance the productivity is the key. So at that stage, I think private sectors plays a bigger role. So going back to the format of state support, I think it goes beyond any single format. So it's a combo. So it includes policy support from the top, and which can be filtered down to the local levels. It's about preferential fiscal support, like a tax rebate. And it's about the resources allocation to research and also even talent nurturing. So I think, yes, for those kind of big projects, state support is there and critical.
So the new whole country approach worked.
Well, and for certain stage, yes.
Okay.
And later on, the key the key lies behind what's next. Yeah.
Ralph, could you provide us with some international context? I mean, this stage of China is certainly makes people thinking of lots of other countries like Japan in 1980s, US possibly in 1950s, the Soviet Union, former Soviet Union 1960s. Are there any similarities, and what's the differences as well?
I was thinking foremost about the Soviet Union, the former Soviet Union, because they had obviously a communist government at the time. They had come off a very difficult revolution and a period of war after that. And the government prioritized science, and they did a reasonably good job of it. Science helped, I think, the public to have some faith and confidence in the government. The government was allowed to build the country and to compete with the West, effectively in some areas like math and nuclear energy. And So in return, Russia got the Soviet Union, now Russia has some of it. They have some pretty decent technology that sustains them to this day. If you look at Japan, going way back like 150 years ago, the government at that time, the imperial government, used to work with large family-owned companies to develop what then passed for really high-end stuff like production for textiles or batteries. Now we kind of laugh at that because this is like old industry, but then it was really super high tech. And then you come into the 1980s and we have things we know about like the Sony Walkman, if you're from that generation. And then we move, but now it's more driven by the private companies. They're still really big. Their goal is still to disrupt and to internationalize and to, of course, sell as much as they can. They do it without the government support, part of the democratization process there. But they know how to do it because they have 150 years of practice.
So when we hold this webinar, we receive lots of questions, and there are loads of concerns in it. For instance, one typical question is that China has apparently already took the lunch of some US businesses. Will they take away the dinner as well? And my question for Ralph is, are these concerns justified? And Stephen, you can jump in after Ralph, maybe, on this question.
Yeah, thanks, Josine, for that question. It's a really good one. I gave it a lot of thought, and thanks to whoever submitted the question as well. So I think I would suggest several answers to that. And basically it means no, they're not going to take anybody. We're actually going to eat it for them because you look at what's going on. So you have, if you live in a developing country, you get these relatively inexpensive goods from China. That's great. You don't have to manufacture them yourself. You can afford them so the public can enjoy their appliances and phones and PCs and whatever you might want at a reasonably low price. And you see that when you travel to developing countries. Developing countries also may be able to help outsource for Chinese manufacturing. So you look at Malaysia, Vietnam, and among others, they're doing chip testing, chip packaging, other kinds of work for Chinese firms. So they're actually enjoying this prosperity. They're eating part of China's lunch or dinner, whatever you may call it. If you live in a developed country, it's probably not such a big issue because, yes, the Chinese goods cost less. But a lot of these countries already have a favorite. Like if you live in the US, you prefer an iPhone because you can afford an iPhone there. You don't need to buy a cheaper Android brand from China. So you have that as a possibility. So I would say we're going to do most of the eating, and perhaps China's already eaten what it needs, but we can all enjoy the meal.
Yeah. Stephen, you mentioned China can make things basically more sustainable, more cheaper. So with this necessary, eroding the existing market share of the established players.
Yeah, exactly. I totally agree with Rob. And in fact, we can take a small historical lesson here. Before the Industrial Revolution, the China goods, they like the porcelain, even irons. Now they have found ships loaded with iron products, sunken ships in the South China Sea, and porcelains and silk, and many other goods. They came from China. It does not take anybody's lunch. In fact, it makes the world better. And if you ask the harder question, why China didn't jump into the Industrial Revolution, it's not that. Well, personally, I think it's not that Chinese is not smart enough, or they don't know anything about coal or oil. In fact, if you look at the history text, Chinese could be the first country in the world that has been using coal in a very large scale. In fact, during the Tang Dynasty, Song Dynasty, and the Ming Dynasty, there were people complaining about smoke produced by coal burning in big cities in China. So going back to the sustainability thing I mentioned earlier, I think it could be related to the Chinese DNA, the culture DNA, that maybe in the guts of the Chinese people, when they realize there's a big problem about coal, they just feel kind of reluctant to make it the ultimate source of energy as what we do today. After the industrial, to be honest, our society today is still built on fossil fuel, and that's not sustainable. We can't go on like this forever. Now, China has curbed its air pollution pretty well, but still, lots of cities still suffer these small issues, and India is suffering a lot from air pollution. So now, if we can transform our economy to the sustainable energy, including the nuclear energy and water power and the solar power, if we can make our planet our economy more sustainable, maybe that's when China will come back, and it will make everybody better. We don't need to fight for the resources like what we did over the past century.
Stephen, you did a lot of history review going back to centuries. Now, the readers more care about the future, so they have the question saying, and if we take a historical perspective view, China has been, since the Industrial Revolution, has always been a follower, never been actually taking the lead. So one question is quite typical is when do you think China will overtake the United States in terms of technology dominance? Will you provide a general kind of time frame?
Well, you asked me to make a prediction. It really depends on what standard you are using. We need to have a benchmark for comparison, like comparing the United States and China. For example, if you compare the sustainable technology, then I'm pretty confident China is already way ahead of the United States in terms of technology, either from solar panel, from even nuclear technology, the commercial nuclear. China built most of the world's fourth generation nuclear reactors. And then, but if you look at the Nobel Prize, then probably in the foreseeable future, China will not surpass the United States. This will be absolutely safe for the United States because, well, I just don't see there's any chance that Chinese scientists will get elected almost every 1 or 2 years from now on. That's impossible. That's impossible. But if you look at other benchmarks like the Nature Index, it was a list compiled by the Nature magazine based on the latest research outputs by the top research outputs by the world's universities and research agencies. China has already gone way ahead of the United States in physical science, in chemistry, and even in environmental science. If you look at the list, for example, chemistry, the top 30 institutes, none of them is American. We can find one from Germany, one from France. All the other institutes, they all come from China. And chemistry, it's the fundamental thing for manufacturing. And so if you use this standard, then China is already ahead of the United States. But if you look at the university rankings, traditional university rankings, like the QS rankings, the Times rankings, you can hardly find any Chinese university as a top 10. They're the best doing, I think, Tsinghua make it to the number 8 today. But if you go back to the Nature Index and you evaluate these universities based on their research outputs, then the Chinese university, they're at the top. They're at the top. So I really can't make a prediction when China will overtake the United States in terms of technology, because it really depends on how you look at things, how you compare.
Fair enough. Yeah. So let's go by sectors and sectors. Jasmine just mentioned COMAC, C919, China's local-made airplane. And in this area, apparently, China is still lagging behind, years behind Boeing and Airbus, right?
Yes.
So how long do you think China can, or how quickly China can catch up? This is about advanced manufacturing, and this is an application. Almost everyone use it. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. And first of all, I would like to share with you, there's also an ABC thing in the aviation market. So China got this dream and ambition to turning the global aviation market into ABC market, meaning breaking the duopoly of Airbus and Boeing with Chinese jets. So this is ABC.
So A for Airbus, B for Boeing, C for
For
Comac.
Chinese, yes, Comac, yes. So this strategy is well underway. In the first step is C919, which is a narrow body jet. So far it has been in the commercial operation smoothly, and Comac has received hundreds of orders from its mainly domestic clients, like big China's big three carriers. And even yesterday, the Post reported that during the C919 passed the test of the very busy the past 40 days of Chinese New Year travel rush. So the reliability is good, and also this year's one of the priority for Comac is scaling up production for C919. And at the same time, of course, China also has the dream of making its own wide body. So similar to C919, it's a branding. So wide body, there are two types. So one is C929, which is close to the size of Boeing Dreamliner or Airbus A350. And the other one at the next level is a C939, so which is close to the size of Boeing Jumbo 777. So, but in terms of, we have to face the reality. The reality is Comac is still mainly assembly. So China still relies heavily on the Western parts suppliers, such as critical components like engine, landing gear. So it's I have to put in a very fair saying, like we've seen a lot of achievements in this area, but we still got a long way to go.
But Stephen, in the outspace, China has more advantage. Is that right? Like in terms of like Starlink and outspace, the space war, etc.
Well, again, it depends on how you look at things. In terms of scale, the Starlink has thousands of satellites in space, and China cannot even come close in terms of number. But I think but people are worrying about whether there will be a conflict between China and the United States and the United States in space, especially when the AI comes into play. And I think one of our readers asked that question, right, about whether the AI will be part of the war in space, so the Star Wars. In fact, when they shoot the Star Wars movie, there was not, the AI did not even exist, even in people's mindset. But my opinion could be a bit counterintuitive. I think the AI will actually reduce the risk of war, particularly in space, because be honest, the AI has already been massively applied in satellites, in those smart satellites. They were quite different from the satellites in the past. In the past, the satellites were controlled by humans, and they need to collect information, and then when they return to China or return to the United States, and then the ground stations will download the images from these satellites. This process is long, and it could cause a lot of misunderstandings. A lot of accidents could happen. What they're doing now is that these satellites are smart. For example, a Chinese launch a satellite that can automatically look for U.S. warships and the fleets in the oceans around the world, and they do need to report back to Beijing what it is. Help me find out what it is, or help me analyze the images. No, the satellites can make the decision themselves. They say, oh, I saw an aircraft carrier fleet. Oh, it was a U.S. Ford class, and then immediately it will relay the images and information back to Beijing. So this actually increases the transparency of battlefield, either to China, to United States, to Europe, or even to Russia. And I think nowadays, if all these parties they have more information at their hands, they have less chance of launching a war, because they knew what the other side could do in ready to strike back. So I think if we have more and more of these smart satellites in space, they can do a lot of other things too, like avoid collision with the space station, to avoid collision between the Chinese and American satellites. Nowadays, some of the old satellites are pretty stupid. They can slam into each other by accident, and this can cause a lot of misunderstandings, right? If they're smart, they can avoid these kind of things, bad things, from happening. So the more AI comes into play, I think that the better we will be off.
Cool.
So yeah, it's already in use. So don't worry about this, and it can do.
Okay.
Yeah, do more good than bad.
Okay, so the next question will be to go to Jasmine again, because you also mentioned robotics. So could you talk a little bit more about robotics? Because it seems like everyone, particularly investors, stock market investors, are really seeing that China's robotics industry, humanoid robotics industry, is going to take off.
Yes, I agree with that, and everyone is excited about that. So this one is an interesting question, and I think if we look back at the development history of the robotics, there are two types of robotics. One is specialized form. So you can see those in the factories, like robotic arms, robotic dogs. And the other one is humanoids, human-shaped robotics. So in terms of applications, and actually, to be honest, there are the application for specialized forms have already been widely used across the world, in factory floors, in EV car maker factories, and also e-commerce. Those kind of specialized robotics can sort packages in e-commerce warehouses, do barcoding, etc. So the advantages for this type of robotics is they can do repetitive, very simple tasks. And the flip side is they may require significant modifications to the working place that can accommodate their special forms. So the highlight recently is what people are talking about is humanoids. So it's a human shaped. So it's as compared with the special form, the robotics, they enjoy much more complex tasks and higher level of intelligence and a better interaction with human beings. And why people are so crazy about this type? Because I think it's an extension of AI into the real physical world. So it's more than, it carries both brain and body. So brain means the technology, the frontier technology side capability like AI, like large language models, foundational model, and semiconductors, and also data analytics, the capability of memories. And in terms of bodies, body, it represents the utmost mechanical capabilities, like actuators, actuator parts, reducers, motoring, screws, sensors, all kinds of, and even batteries. So it's a combination of everything. So this is why people are so excited about it. It's in a big ecosystem and a big supply chain. So in terms of applications, we know that specialized forms have been used in industrial scenarios already, but for human-shaped robotics, it's already been used for some cultural tour guide, services categories, and Wang Xinxin, the Unitree CEO, which makes the dancing robotics during the show, and Wang Xinxin, who's also one of the entrepreneurs, made a presentation to President Xi Jinping earlier this month. So he is very optimistic about the outlook of this year, and he believes the wide use of humanoids robotics in the service and industrial scenarios will happen in the years in the next, basically this year or in the next 1 to 2 years. But in terms of household use, like taking care of old men or those kind of elderly services, this process could be proceed with much more with caution because they have higher safety requirements and technological requirements. So in short, everyone is excited, super excited about this progress, and also they believe, firmly believe, the ChatGPT moment is on the horizon for humanoids.
Very good. That's a very comprehensive industry review. And we also have lots of philosophical questions about this issue from our audience. I would direct this question to you. Some people say, with very, as Jasmine said, with excitement, it's wonderful, when future robots with deep minds moving around us. And some people are saying, like, this looks quite scary and even kind of dangerous. How about, they refuse to listen to our orders or something malfunction happening in these robots? And what can we do, or what, the infrastructure is needed to usher us into this area of robotics?
I would first urge any naysayers to visit a hotel lobby in mainland China, because my first encounter with a robot in China was indeed in a hotel lobby, and I've seen them in other hotels, also in restaurants, and they, at first I thought it was somebody's stray dog. I won't kid you, it was kind of this thing moving toward me, and I didn't know if I should pet it on the head, or if I should stand down, or if I should talk to it.
Or should run away?
Or if I should run away, yeah. It was about half my height, so I was like, okay, maybe I just stand there and see what happens. And I realized that it was carrying out orders for the hotel concierge or for the desk to do something. And I saw the same thing happening in the restaurants, and I realized that I don't think they're a threat. Whatever they may do or may not do, they will in fact stop moving if you stand in front of them and wait for you to pass. So what can we do to ensure they don't take on too much power? Well, they are, after all, controlled by humans, and as the other panelists mentioned, we're going to apply AI and software that we can control, so we can control these things as much as we want to help us make things in factories, or to help the elderly, or to serve us in restaurants, take our dishes away, and that kind of thing. So I don't really expect any kind of a dystopian future.
Cool.
At least not this year, not in 2025.
Okay. So for this topic, Made in China 2025, actually a lot of reader questions about related to, say, climate change. Maybe because the US has a little bit, and Trump has almost like given up on the climate change commitment. So there's a question on how China's increasing manufacturing capabilities is going to help climate change, and even do some geoengineering to help the climate change. Stephen, I think it's your beat.
Yes. Scientists have proposed many crazy proposals. I think some scientists are really worried about climate change, and that's legitimate. This is a real threat to humanity. But some of these proposals, such as spraying a huge amount of tiny little particles into the high atmosphere to reflect the sound, to make the sound rays bounce back to the universe. Things like that, again, in Chinese standard, is not sustainable. You just can't deal with climate change for dealing with climate change's sake. To the Chinese, we always crave for something that's you can shoot 3 birds with 1 stone. So what we are seeing happening in China today in terms of geoengineering is that we were seeing a huge amount of solar panels being erected in Western Desert, in the Gobi Desert, and then the miracles happened. The grass began to grow under these panels, because the panels they reduce the radiation from the sun, and they reduce the temperature, and they increase humidity, and then the grass began to grow. And then after the grass, then come the chickens, come the come the sheep. So uh, so this becomes this solar power plants, they become a very sustainable model of for dealing with climate change. We reduce carbon emission and we increase food production, and then we even reduce the size of the desert and improve the local environment. And the same happens on this in the ocean. Jasmine, your team has written a lot of stories about this. The Chinese companies erected a huge wind turbine, offshore turbine, and then it's just the beginning of the story. And then they began to build a fish farm, an apple farm around the fish turbine, around the wind turbine, and use the electricity generated to grow fish. And
Different,
so
so different.
so yeah, this kind of thing, I'm sure these are the mega projects that can have a positive impact on our on the for the climate change mitigation campaign. But on the other hand, they are not just they're not just aiming at reducing the temperature. They also aim at improving like food security and increasing people's living standard. And I think that the same rule can be applied to other parts of the world as well. It is technologies are not difficult, and I'm pretty sure these Chinese companies are willing to sell their equipment elsewhere.
Okay, very good point. This is related to next question actually. Another one is Belton Road, China's Belton Road initiative. So what's the relationship between like Made in China 2025, or maybe China will have its 15th five-year plan, and then how this, well, China basically export its more products and capacities to these Belt and Road countries, and how this is going to affect these countries.
So I think China will indeed export at least the lower end of the high-tech scale, just in terms of pure investment in any country, including Belt and Road countries, because they've always been trying to rely on exports. The ODI focus has gotten stronger over the years, so it just makes sense commercially for them to do that. However, when it comes to the Belt and Road, as you may know, it's now I believe it's a 12-year-old project to help China improve and accelerate its trade with the rest of the world. So that means infrastructure. Traditionally, the Belt and Road has called for very traditional infrastructure like ports, airports, power plants, roads, and all that. So low tech, if any technology at all. But under the newer version of this, which is now in its second or third year, we can see that technology is going to play a bigger role. Like, for example, what Stephen was saying, you need to have more sustainability. So some of the power plants that China has helped to build in the past in Belt and Road countries are going to need better technology, more sustainable stuff. So China will indeed be exporting that to make these projects work better, to improve its image in some of the Belt and Road nations with which it partners already. And I think that we have also interviewed economists saying that technology or the expertise itself coming out of China is a Belt and Road product, if you will. So China can send a team of engineers to someplace in the Middle East or Northern Africa, for example, and say, we can show you how to build a power plant or a solar farm or something like that. So it's becoming a part of the Belt and Road.
So Jasmine, as we all know, China is going to have this two sessions
Yes.
next month, National People's Congress and also CPPCC, and it will be in Beijing. So
Yes.
this annual event, of course, will have this government work report, but this year is also particular because it's a closing year for the existing five-year plan, and they're going to make the 15th five-year plan starting from 2026. So any particular saying that we should pay attention to, or investors should pay attention to, any specific technological areas that will be the key points for Beijing?
Yes, yes, two sessions are coming, and I have to say, and the two sessions will kickstart on March 4th and last for about 1 week in Beijing, and also traditionally the eco data released from Premier Li Qiang's government work report will be the key things we watch out for. So such as this year's GDP target and fiscal deficit ratio and total government planning for government's total spending, etc. So on top of this quantitative targets, we also need to pay attention to qualitative policy discussions, either from the Premier's government work report or on the sidelines of delegations' discussions. So that in this way, we can have the sense of what kind of focus areas China is going to pay attention to work on that, or to give us any indication or how to implement strategies, like how China is going to do to boost the economy, to boost the domestic consumptions. So these kind of qualitative discussion give us the clue. And in terms of technology, as you mentioned, this year will be the closing year for the plan, and new plan is in the making. And I think China will continue to double down its efforts for the tech advancement, because this is the pathway for the economy to the sustainability. We mentioned this word already. Quite a lot, and also China's aim to move up the value chain. This is something we for sure, and it's the only thing is could be different names. So I also want to take this opportunity to say that the Post is going to report extensively about the upcoming two sessions, and readers to stay tuned.
Related to a question from our reader is, what are the key bottleneck issues China is going to focus on to solve in the coming years? Stephen?
What about bottlenecks?
Yes.
I would say it's not about the hard technology, it's about human, the talent flow. Right now, China not only needs to grow its own talent. There are a lot of talented students within China, and the students are very bright. But we also need a lot of the talents from other countries, especially scientists working in Chinese-born scientists working in the United States, and lots of them are considering to come back to China, and some of them are very, very senior with a lot of experience, who has contributed a lot to the technological wonder of the United States over the past few decades. And when these people come back, they will not only contribute directly to the growth of science and technology in China, but also they can teach a lot of students. And these students, they don't need to go to the United States to study, especially students in the universities on the U.S. sanction list. They can just learn from this. The professors return from the United States and keep on pace with the latest developments around the world. And but for them to come back, there are a lot of difficulties, especially for people who have been living in the West for decades. So how the society and the government and the companies can overcome these hurdles will be very important for China's future economic development. And SCMP and our science team will keep a very close watch on this.
I'm sure about that.
Thanks.
So let me have a last concluding question, and here's also a forward-looking question. So we know China's manufacturing is already the world's number one. In terms of value added, it's possibly US, Germany, Japan, and India combined. So how further China can go in terms of the manufacturing power? Can't China take over or at least half of the world's manufacturing capabilities? And also, if you would like to provide a picture, envision what China's manufacturing will look like by 2035, 10 years from now. Let's start from Jasmine.
I would say it's manufacturing in the context of technology advancement. I would say people used to think about China, US is very capable of turning 0 to 1, exploring the unknown. And China is more capable of turning 1 to n and making mass applications of new technology and on the basis of advanced its strength in manufacturing. I would like to highlight the gap. This kind of theory has been proved the case during the internet era and seems to be true during the current AI era. But I would like to say the gap is narrowing, maybe at the speed that goes beyond people's previous expectations. And because China has established the supply chain and manufacturing base, and also it's a huge market to local adoption opportunities, and also the talent Stephen talked about. So they laid a very solid foundation for this good cycle going forward. So in my view, I would think the global innovation, the race for that is far from over.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's going to be a marathon.
Yeah. Stephen, 2035.
Oh.
Made in China 2035, what would it look like?
Well, I would suggest everybody to take a look at the moon, and we're going to the moon.
Okay.
Stop worrying about what's going on the Earth. Stop fighting for resources. That there are enough resources on Earth for everybody. We just need to look at the things in the right way. We just need to find clever ways to make use of these resources. There are unlimited energy right under our feet, and it's not fossil fuel. We have a story coming up to explain that.
Okay.
But yeah, but I'm pretty optimistic about the future, because the way we are heading is not about fighting for resources. It's not fighting for territories. We are going to the technology will make everybody better off. Yeah, I'm a firm believer of this.
Ralph?
I would say, I don't know if it's going to be 2035 or 2045, but eventually China, like most developed or highly developing countries, however you want to phrase it, they get tired of manufacturing. They don't want it anymore. They don't want pollution. They don't want smokestacks. They want to go up the value chain. And you can see this in many parts of the United States and other parts of developed Asia that have made this transition away from heavy industry. So in terms of answering the question, how far can it go? Well, it can go as far as it wants, technically. There are no real barriers, but I don't think the society is going to want it in 20 years' time. And they will be focused by then, if not earlier, on software, internet technology, e-commerce, things that still employ enough people but don't pollute the air. And if they need, they'll always have some manufacturing, as all countries do, for their security and for prices and other reasons, but they won't depend on it the way they do now.
Very good. So this brings an end to today's webinar, and thank all for staying with us. China's tech field is set to see fascinating changes in 2025 and beyond. And what we see now, DeepSeek, EV, robotics, could just be the tip of an iceberg, as Stephen said. So thanks again to our panelists today. And also for SCMP readers who are interested in China tech, please once again remind you to follow China Future Tech section on SCMP. And also, it is a one-stop site for the six sectors: EV, AI, semiconductors, robotics, aerospace, and biomedicine. For those who want a more in-depth look and more than usual SCMP content, please also subscribe. SCMP Plus feature product provides insights and analysis into the news stories. Once again, thank you for watching. See you next time.